welcome everybody to the special edition of the Military Wire with Mike Schindler. I am, of course, Mike Schindler, and this is the Vision 2020 Live on Purpose live podcast. We do their special speaker series where we still interview some of America's most elite men and women who have served this country, and oftentimes we'll have some who haven't served in uniform, but they've done some pretty amazing things. And the reason we have them on the show is so that people can learn from their overcoming. And so I'm excited about today's topic. I think I pulled this from the jar of everything my mom told me never to talk about, which was combat, God, country, and being Black in America. And obviously for some of you, you know that I know nothing about being Black in America, which is why we've got Marselis Nelson on the show today. And we're really going to be talking about how to rise up when you hit rock bottom. That's going to be part of this, so that those of you who might be experiencing some traumatic event in your life, whether it's emotional, financial, spiritual, etc., you can learn from this experience, and that's our goal today. So let me tell you about Marselis. I'm excited to have him on the show, and I've got to read his bio so I don't screw this up. But Marselis served 8 years on active duty in both the United States Marine Corps and the United States Army. I'm not sure why he left the Marine Corps, but we'll get to that, I'm sure. And as a Marine, he was a non-commissioned officer. He led enlisted personnel as part of the 12th Marine Division in Okinawa, Japan, and the 1st Marine Logistics Group based out of Camp Pendleton. And while he was in the Army, he conducted numerous mounted and dismounted patrols while serving in Baghdad, Iraq, with the 1st Battalion, 7th Field Artillery Regiments. And Marselis is married. He's got a beautiful wife. They have 4 children from the ages of 10 to 2 years old. God bless you, my friend, for having a 2-year-old. Jeez. They're in Texas, and Marselis says, you know what, he's gracious for the journey of life the Lord has brought them together on. He's currently pursuing his Master's of Divinity at the Covenant Theological Seminary, and his passions are smoking cigars. I love that you're smoking a cigar on the show. I love it. I love it. And he loves mentoring men, veterans, and young boys. Marselis, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mike. I really appreciate it. And shout out to Buzz for making this happen, for connecting us via our meeting in the Cigar Lounge. So God is good.
Yeah, no, I'm loving this. Well, you know, I picked this topic, combat, God, country, and being Black in America, because I think these are topics that everybody kind of talks about behind closed doors. And sometimes in order for us to learn and grow, we got to talk about these topics out in the open. And I know that you and I have had conversations, and I just want to say that while we've never hugged on each other or shaken each other's hand in person yet, and I believe that that's a yet, I think you're the right person for this. So before we dive into these 4 topics, Marselis, I'm going to encourage our audience, because I want to get them involved. I want you guys to know that you can ask questions. So if you have questions that you want to ask, put them in the chat box. We'll get to those. Hopefully we'll get to those here in the next 30 minutes. That's our goal, is to wrap this up in 30 minutes. But I want our live audience to kind of ponder this for a little bit. Is to think about this question: are we living truly in a racially divided America? I think we're seeing a lot on the news right now. I know my military experience, I served with all walks of life, all colors, all religious backgrounds. And I never felt divided in the service. But again, that could be because of the color of my skin. I'm probably not the best person to talk about that. And that's why we've got Marselis on this show. But if you do think that we're living in a divided America, I want you to kind of think about, how do we solve it? And that'll be something that Marselis and I kind of tackle together, is we might even open that up for a little bit of Q&A back and forth on that question. So the goal in that chat box is to be nice, be civil. That's the goal. Okay? This podcast is committed to helping everybody grow and think critically. So with that, Marselis, your story is so compelling. I can't believe you left the Marine Corps to go to the Army. Or maybe it was the other way around. But why don't you share with our audience about your struggle, but certainly your military experience and where you went from there.
So I graduated high school out of Monroe, Louisiana. Home of Duck Dynasty, for people who always ask, that sounds familiar. They say, that sounds familiar. Where is that? So I tell them, Home of Duck Dynasty, and then automatically clicks to them. I graduated in 2005, and 5 days after graduation, I was on those yellow footsteps in Parris Island, South Carolina. Joining the ranks, or, earning my way through joining the ranks of being in the United States Marine Corps. So I did that, and then I did 4 years in the Marine Corps. I had some tragic family things that happened. My brother, I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan, and I found out my oldest stepbrother, he had been diagnosed with cancer.
Mm.
So I was in that window of reenlistment or get out. And some other factors played, that was a huge factor that played, in my decision to get out, but some other things played a factor as well. I got out, and after doing my 4 years, I got out in May of 2009, and ETS officially in June 2009. And then my brother passed away of cancer in January 2010.
Oh, wow.
So I was, I got out in the Marine Corps, but, I missed the military life. I was lost. I went to the Marine Corps because I was running away from, childhood issues, childhood trauma. And then I found myself in the Marines, got out, found myself in more trauma, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But, this time it was, just family related. And it was just one of those things, Mike, where when you're used to running away from things, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And so instead of facing, my struggles head on, I ran to the Army. I enlisted in the United States Army in April of 2010. Then I landed in Iraq out of Port Riley, Kansas with 1-7. I ended up in Iraq in October 2010.
No kidding. There's something that you said that's so compelling to me, because this is a theme for almost anybody that has ever served this country. Is when we get out, oftentimes we feel lost, right? Because our mission, our purpose, our identity has all been assigned to us, and so we gravitate to it, and then we get out, and and I think you're right. Oftentimes we run and we look for something else to fill that hole in our soul, which is what you were talking about, joining the Army. Talk to us a little bit about your experience over there in Iraq. What happened in Iraq? Anything life-changing that could have transformed your personality or who you are?
Yeah, so there are some people who go to Kuwait, which is not a deployment. That's a shameless plug. I'm sorry, but I got to put it out there, right? And they be like, I deployed. Where you go? Kuwait. Run, sit down somewhere. And then there's some people who go overseas and they never seen in combat. Like, I know guys who are, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Rangers, and they've been overseas, but they never saw combat. They never got shot at, blowed up, anything. And for us, it was completely opposite. For us, we went where we thought, things had slowed down. But we got mortared every day.
Is that right?
And then IEDs on top of that. So you're driving out on the mountain patrol, and you're running over IEDs, and they're blowing off tires, blowing holes through Humvees, through the engine block, the sides of basketballs, like just craziness. And so you quickly understand the beauty of life and death. Like you have a different grasp of what is in front of you. And I got a friend of mine, my buddy Chevy. He always says, one day at a time, one day at a time. And normally when he uses it with me, it's at the most inconvenient time. So it really irritates me, but it's true. One day at a time, right? That's biblical. Because God says, the birds don't worry about tomorrow. So, we shouldn't be anxious for anything, for tomorrow will take care of itself. But when you're in Iraq or you're in Afghanistan or, wherever you've been, as far as a combat theater, it truly is one day at a time, because you're busy all day long and you're literally trying to figure out, if I go outside the wire this time, it's just the last one. And Mike, we were there for some months and we just kept getting lucky. We get lucky here, lucky there, ID buried too low here, went out too early there, or, this RKG3, it hit the Humvee, but it didn't go off by the grace of God. And it was just it was a game of luck, it's a game of inches, literally. But then the luck ran out. We had some guys from route clearance who had came to clear a route for us, and they went out, hit IED, got ambushed. I had a RPG shot through the top of the turret and left the guy with a $half size hole in his chest, and he was dead by the time the birds came. And so that's when that was when the luck was over with. Like all the good luck, it was all out the window. And after that, man, it just, it progressed. And then in June of 2011, we were waking up, getting ready for patrols, getting ready for outpost scars. Um, and we got ambushed. It was like 5:30 or so in the morning. And I remember I'm bending over. I'm tying my boots, getting ready. I'm half asleep, because we had done a mission before, so I'm half asleep. And literally, I get my second boot on. I don't even get it tied, and just the entire room just rocked. I'm in my shoe, so the shoes like two people live in one shoe.
Yeah.
And the entire shoe just gets rocked. And I remember I remember flying in the air and then falling on my face, and like I blacked out for a second, and then I came to, and then as soon as I came to, the second explosion went off. And by the time the second explosion went off, my roommate wasn't he wasn't tasked to go on the patrol that day, but his body is literally like floating in the air, slow motion, as it's coming down from the ground from the impact of the explosion. And he looks up as he hits the ground. He says, "What the fuck?" Excuse my French, right? But
Family show. We'll mute that out, but I
yeah.
get it. Yeah.
So he says that, like, what the world? And we immediately knew that we were under attack. But there was nothing we can do, right? There was no sirens. We didn't have any fancy guns to shoot it down. Like, we were just sitting ducks. And we knew this, and it was something that we had dreaded. It was, something that had been talked about, as far as being ambushed, via, rocket attacks. Because mortars are one thing. Mortars, you can hear them, they whistle, they make noises. You can sort of kind of somewhat, gauge where they're at, right? And then the sirens go off. But the rockets are so quick, they fly underneath such a small elevation that it doesn't trigger the alarms. And so I want to say, Mike, by the time the fourth rocket exploded, that's when the alarm finally went off. It was a day late, dollar short. And so altogether, we got hit with 6 IRAMs, I believe it was. But afterwards, man, people think that the World Trade Center was something crazy. For us, that was our 9/11, right? For us, that was our World Trade Center. God rest their souls.
How did that change? And I know we got some questions pouring in. We'll get to those. But how did that either cement your faith, or did that make you question your faith, your religion?
It wasn't. So, Mike, I wouldn't say I had faith then.
Is that right?
My mom raised me in the church because of some of the things I had dealt with as a kid. When I went to the military, I was just like, and I got my own place to stay, my own car, I make money, I got my own food. What I need God for, right? I got women, what I need God for.
Yeah.
But so I was sort of kind of, being honest with you, Mike, I was sort of kind of on the tear, to be honest with you. And after we had got ambushed, we ended up losing 5 guys in that attack. And but there was bodies everywhere. There were some body parts in certain parts of the camp, certain parts of the fog where we were at. There was craters, with unfortunate things inside of the craters. And there were men who were burnt up. One of my best friends, Marselis Nelson, he was burnt up 91% of his body, over 91% of his body. And there was grown men screaming. There's some things I won't speak about out of respect for the widows, but it went more in the depth than just that. But ultimately, there's 5 people, soldiers dead in one day. And then my buddy Centron, he passes away 10 days later from his wounds. And so it's one of those things where it just gets real. And for me, I was pissed at God because, here my buddy, Centron had, multiple kids, multiple children, he had a wife. And so some of these guys, they never got to meet their kids, right? We had a guy who, he had extended to stay in Iraq, and his fiance was pregnant. He never got to meet his kid. We've had some guys who went home, they got married while on their 2 weeks of leave, and then came back to Iraq and then got killed a week, 2 weeks later. So it was one of those things where it was just completely unfortunate.
Did that drive you toward God, though? I know you say
that drove me away.
For me, what brought you to? Because I think this is so important for people, because people are in crisis, right? I mean, whether it's a mental, physical war zone right now, Marseliss, we know that the nation, right, a lot of stuff going on. in the country
Yeah.
right now, right? So there's physical battles, there's mental battles. People are in their own war zones, and not to diminish what happens in the physical by any stretch. But how did you push through that to suddenly say, you know what, I got to lean into God and not pull away from him? What was that deciding factor? Because I think people need to learn what they're going to pick a path, right?
Yeah.
So how did you pick your path?
I didn't.
You
I
didn't.
didn't lean into it. I didn't lean into it. After my buddy, so we every day for those 10 days, we were praying and hoping that he would survive, right? But he was pretty banged up. Like he was pretty far gone. Like we knew the chances were slim to none. And so when the news came down, like I remember, it was a whole lot of blasphemy that God, right? And there was a lot of cursing from my lips.
Yeah.
I told God, you don't know how to count. I got one child, a wife, and a marriage that's on the rocks. Like, this dude got a whole family, multiple kids. So for me, I felt as if God was incompetent in those he had chose to live or die in war. And so when I came home, immediately my PTSD kicked in. And I refused to believe it was PTSD. But Mike, I'm on a tear at this point, right? I'm full-blown alcoholic by the time I get off the plane in Kansas, Topeka, Kansas, and by the time we get to back to Fort Riley, I get back home, and Mike, I'm drinking a fifth of whatever liquor that you put in front of me, dark, light, and I'm not mixing it with nothing. I'm drinking it because these demons are real, and the nightmares are real. Everything's my anger was out of control, and so for me, Mike, it wasn't I found God. It wasn't that I leaned on God in the midst of the storm. It was my career, my Army career ending after my first sergeant out of 211. He made me go see a therapist.
Yeah.
And that conversation happened, and I tell all the time, I said, my career ended over a bottle of Jameson, so we won't go there. But so over a bottle of Jameson, being made to go see the therapist. That Monday I saw the therapist, I believe it was. That Wednesday, my career was done. Recommended for the med board, mentally unstable. And so it's one of those things where my career had to end. I had to run for another year from God. And then in 2015, in a cigar lounge of all places, right? There was a pastor who was at the cigar lounge, and he just gave me the gospel for a year, for about an hour and a half. He just gave me the gospel, right? And that's when, at the end of my night at the cigar lounge in Pasadena, California, Gabe on. I'm so grateful for him because, if it wasn't for him, I would have killed myself, right? And I tried multiple times, by the way, to kill myself before that. But this time I would have, fully succeeded. And but he invited me to his church, and I had an hour ride home. I drove home and I cried all the way home, right? Because I knew that Thursday before, I had gave God an ultimatum, and I told God that if you're real, right, you got to present yourself in a manner and the fashion in which I believe it by Saturday night at midnight, or on your holy day on Sunday and blow my brains out. And I had a pistol and a Glock. I put it on my ottoman, took a shower, went about my business. Thursday night, nothing. Friday night, nothing. Saturday night, I got invited on a date. I was dating a gal, and she, asked me to come to the Cigar Lounge. And it was Saturday night at the Cigar Lounge. It was past midnight, but the pastor was there, and the rest has been what it's been, right?
That's pretty amazing. That, what I love about your story too, Marseliss, is it's not a story of perfection by any stretch, right? It is a story of struggle, of healing through it. For those of you who are live, you're seeing my daughter in the background. This is always great, when we move everything to a home office, right?
That's why I didn't say at my house,
you never know what you're going to get. So, but I love that. I don't love that you gave God an ultimatum, right? That's risky, but
you're telling me, right?
Yeah. But I love that it worked out. And I love that you're married. I love that you got 4 kids. I love that you're on track. I love that you're mentoring veterans, that you're working with, that you're in the ministry now, that you're working to change lives. And, you know, as we're changing lives, and, you know, we used to say, you know, back when I was in the Navy, we'd always say this, you know, one team, one fight, right? And
Hmm.
you know, the term dirtbag, uh,
Yeah,
you know, and it didn't matter what color your skin was. You know, if you were the dirtbag, you were the dirtbag, man. You either performed or you didn't, right?
yeah,
And, you know, we get out into society now, and I know, you know, with, you know, some of our, you know, my brothers and sisters, you know, the tribe that we hang out with, you know, we talk about this often, and I see such division. I see war in the US on so many fronts. I'm going to say spiritual. I'm also going to say, you know, political, uh, and now, you know, race. And I don't know. For me, it's really hard because, you know, I don't, Marcellus. I'm just being straight up with you. I've never had to really worry, to be honest with you. It's not because I've had an easy life, right? I mean, I've had my own struggles, and people know about those, but I've never had to worry about somebody judging me for the color of my skin. And unless I was in the Bronx, right? And
mm,
then I kind of experienced that. And that was kind of a freak show moment for me because I was like shocked, like what the heck. So, but are we today, like, how do we, because you see it and it's going on. I want to get your perspective on this. How do we heal this nation now? If we truly are one team, one fight for one vision, what do you see from your perspective as a way that we can unite as a country to make this country even better? Like, how do we bring it back under God?
well, I, it starts with the love piece, Mike. Christ in the New Testament, you know, before he left for the last time, before he comes back again, Christ gave, you know, two very simple commands, you know, love and make disciples, go forth to the nations and make disciples.
Yeah.
And the piece with the military is, you know, people ask me, you know, is there racism in the military? Yes, there's racism everywhere you go, right? And the
Yep.
military is just, the thing with the military is, you know, I spent 8 years in the military and I only had one incidence of, you know, racism, blatant racism. However, the thing that makes us so different in the military is everybody dignifies everybody's background and culture and where they come from.
Yep.
And it's not that they don't see color, we don't see color. We do see the color and we do embrace it. But at the end of the day, right, you know, you're in the Marine Corps, everybody's green.
Yep.
And, you know, when you're in the Army, you know, everybody is a soldier unless you're a turd. And if you're a turd, you're just a turd, right? but, and that's the thing, like, our, our society today in America needs to understand the concept of agreeing to disagree.
Yeah.
There are so many people I disagree with in the military, but yet I had much love. And if I didn't have love for them, I still have respect for them because of who they are and their position and their title, right?
Yeah.
And so we have, as a country, never dignified one another from the beginning. America was founded how it was founded, right? You know, America was founded with blacks in shackles. The Revolutionary War, blacks fought in every war in America,
Yep.
but yet weren't given these same benefits and the same equal treatment. So when we know what is beyond the history books, but what is American history, we have to understand that in order for us to start truly changing, it starts now. Like it has been changing, and I'm in strong belief that America is the best place for blacks worldwide to thrive, you know, economically and socially. However, the social piece is what's lacking. The social piece is why everything is in the uproar right now. Um, I wouldn't even, people ask, you know, is this, are the times we living in more like a race war? It's a lack of love, Mike. Like it is a lack of,
Yeah.
it's a lack of people being unwilling to step out of their little bubbles and their little circles and to either one, bring in people who don't look like them, who culture isn't theirs, to be a part of their circle, or stepping out, reevaluating their friends and those who are in their circles and seeing where they stand in the mirror, right? You know, where is their prejudice? Where is their biasness? Where is their, are they racist? I had a conversation with a guy, he was in the military, and he was a racist, and he admits it, right? And I posted his video, but then he also admits that he changed, and the
Yeah.
Lord changed his ways and changed his heart, and now he's been outspoken about that, right? Because now his best friend and his kid's godfather is a black man.
Yeah.
And it sometimes, Mike, it takes that intentional relationship for you to change your lens and to change your
Yeah.
ways. And for me, I've been blessed that, my best friends are white cops. My best friends are white cowboys. They're black workers. They're black business owners. And so I've had a diverse, right? One of my best friends, he's Native American and Hispanic. And he was in the military together. Like, so I've had a diverse group of close-knit friends that I've gotten to see life through a different lens. And I've gotten to have a different appreciation for police officers who aren't crooked, right? Because
Yeah.
we live in a cancel culture, and everybody wants to cancel everything, right? They want to cancel all the cops. And I'm like, no, you can't cancel all the cops. The system and the policing system is broken. It has been broken since its inception of slave patrols. Yes, it's been broken. The system was never meant for minorities, and that's true. However, I know cops right now, black, white, Cuban, Asian, whatever, who are good cops, who aren't racist, who love the people in the community that they serve, but yet we vilify and demonize them because we live in a cancel culture.
Well,
Just
we're
like blacks,
seeing,
not
right?
every black is a thug and a hoodlum, but they see one, right, and they figure that we're all the same way, and
Yeah.
that's just not how it is, Mike.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I think if we approached it, conversation, I posted something that I said, I'm sad that we're divided because of our differences instead of having discussions, right? Like,
Yeah,
we could have differences, and it doesn't mean we have to hate each other because of those differences. It just means, man, we think differently on this topic. I still have you at my house. We still, break bread together, and we still have discussion. And I think that's lacking in America. And I love what you said about, we need to see through the lens of love. And I know some people, Marcellus, will probably give you a hard time on that. Like, seriously,
yeah,
really, you got to love, when all this other stuff is going on. But I think you're right, because you're seeing it through some lens. Whatever lens you're seeing it through is going to shape your perspective of the situation, right?
yeah,
And I think, to
definitely.
your point, if it's through love, if you and I view each other through a lens of love, then we have the motive to understand each other, right?
Yes,
And I think
yes.
that's the point you're getting to. There's some questions filing in here, and I know I told people we'd keep this to 30 minutes, and we might go a little bit late, but um, Sandra wrote in. She said, what an amazing journey. What are your top 2 changes you've experienced that you will carry forward for yourself and helping others?
My top two. Oh man. Uh, so love being, for me, staying grounded in my faith.
Yeah,
So staying grounded in my faith is the biggest thing, because the moment in which I walk away from my faith and I try to do it and I try to be me, and I try to control every situation or situations in general, it doesn't work for me. So staying grounded in my faith is the first thing, because that builds my resiliency from there. So my faith is my foundation, and then from there I just build, like little Lego blocks, right?
yeah,
Um, and then the second thing is being able to agree to disagree. Like there's people who I don't like, there's politicians I don't like, there's pastors I don't like, right? Um, but understanding that sometimes you don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as we say.
yeah,
Sometimes you just need to change the water. Sometimes somebody needs to come clean the baby because the baby's dirty.
yeah,
And that's what it is, right? It's called, enlightening people of their ignorance, right? Giving people knowledge of things that they just don't know about, because the history books don't talk about a whole lot of things that blacks and other minorities already understand. So that piece of being able to disagree out of love,
yeah,
that grace piece, being able to give somebody grace, but also sometimes you just have to just let them be. Like there's been people who I couldn't change them, and they just wanted to be ignorant as can be. I had guys say, "Oh, racism doesn't exist," and then they'll come back, after we haven't talked for a year, 2 years, and apologize because now they experienced it.
yeah,
And so it's one of those things, Mike, where I knew it exists. Do I think everybody is racist? Absolutely not. I don't think every white person is racist, just like I don't think every cop is crooked. But
Yeah.
do you have those? You have crooked cops. That's why we are in the situation we're in. Because people are tired of, the bad cops. You got bad cops good cops calling out bad cops. You got good police chiefs calling out their bad police officers and telling them, bring in your badge and lay it on my counter if you don't have an issue with X, Y, and Z, right? And particularly the killing and the lynching and the murdering of Mr. Floyd in Minnesota. So it's one of those things, Mike, where people have to learn how to have open dialogue.
Yeah.
I think some people need to get off of social media
Yep.
or limit their time on social media.
80% of our problems would go away if we did that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because social media is very divisive.
Yeah.
Like I made a post about last week or so, and I was wrong. So my Army buddies, they let me know I was wrong. I owned up to it. I've since deleted the post, but I kept it up there for educational purposes for a while. But it's one of those things. When I'm wrong, and somebody tells me wrong, and I know I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm not too prideful to say.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
I love that you own it. And I want to be respectful because, I know people are buying into this subject too, and they'll love it on the replay. But, Mark asked, hey, what has your wife meant to your healing?
Oh, my wife meant everything. So my wife and I were married for 6 years when I was in the Marine Corps. I met my wife in the Marine Corps. We were married for 6 years. And then I left my wife another woman. I had a lot of other women on the side and got another woman pregnant while my wife was pregnant. So I was a walking mortar show. Like it was absolutely out of control. We had our one son. And then I went to Iraq. I came back. She got pregnant again. But then 3 months later, I got another woman pregnant doing a little weekend, being up to no good one weekend. And that's what it was. Then I became a father of two because I couldn't have any self-control or discipline. So for me, my wife, she has always been a praying woman. She's always been a godly woman. But I eventually left my wife another woman. And we were divorced for 4 years. Now, by the grace of God, we got remarried. Me and my wife, Mary, got remarried in 2000. I'm about to get in trouble. 17. So March of 2017, me and my wife got remarried, and we've been remarried for a little over 3 years now, Mike. And that has been a heaven send because my wife, her relationship with Christ was already, it was already solid. But when I put her through the divorce and everything that she went through for 4 years, she really took her relationship with the Lord to a whole new depth. And so for her, my wife is really solid. Like, she don't even like me smoking cigars, but my wife is, she has been the single most important thing, the single most important piece of the journey for me in life outside of Christ. So outside of Christ, my wife has been my rock. She has been my moral compass.
I love that.
And I don't put all my trust in my wife, right? Because ultimately my trust is in God. Ultimately, my trust is in when I read scripture and what does scripture say, right? Because at the end of the day, scripture has the final authority. So my trust is in the Lord and my relationship with Christ. But my wife is a blessing, like the Bible says. He finds a wife, finds a good thing. And it's so true. Like, it's so true. Like I'm still a hot mess, but I'm not as much of a hot mess.
Well, I think there's such a great story for people in that too, is, things can just fall, the wheels can fall off the bus, and yet, God's path is always going to be accomplished. And sometimes it's going to be with you and sometimes it's going to be without you. But if you're open to it, God will step in. And I love that your wife and you are healing. I love that you guys are healing together. Some great questions coming in. I'm going to have to shut it off here pretty soon, but there's one here that I think is pretty important for some people. And that is, how has your PTS affected your ability to love others? Do you feel like your faith has been a major detriment in the success of your marriage? Or is there more competition for emotional progress?
So as far as what, my PTSD or what?
Well, let's start with the first one. How has your PTSD affected your ability to love others?
Oh, man. So Mike, let me take off my I love Jesus hat and be real. Naturally, I hate people, like
Is that right?
everybody, equally, naturally. But then whenever I realize that I'm a child of God before I'm human, then I love everybody, but I keep people at a distance. Certain
Yeah.
people I allow to be close if I feel as if I can be me fully, and others I keep at a distance. My PTSD is an everyday thing, like every day.
Mm.
Uh, the Lord took alcohol and being an alcoholic from me, but he did not take the PTSD, because that is, like David says, my sin is ever before me. My PTSD, it not only is a constant flashback of combat, right? But it is also a constant remind. It also constantly reminds me of my past in general, through certain things that might happen. So my PTSD is something where if I'm not leaning on Christ, Mike, I'd kill myself if I wasn't leaning on Christ. Point
Yeah.
blank simple. Like, I wouldn't be here right now, even today, if I didn't have Christ, because I can bear my demons. I can bear the nightmares. I can bear the ugliness from my past through my relationship with the Lord.
Yeah, I think the beauty of that, and I know some people are going to be shocked by this because, we talk about, combat God country being Black in America, and really in some ways it might seem like a little revival that's going on here. But uh, I think it's so important because this being why I think this is so important, your journey, your story, so important. It's because people are in a fight, right?
Yes.
Whether it's emotional, financial, spiritual, uncertainty, anxiety, off the charts, right? I mean, I see all the studies that are coming through, suicide rates bumping up. And your story, to be able to lean in and say, listen, you know what, I have the ability to cast my cares, and that's comforting, right? Because you're right that, with all the stuff that's going on, if people don't find a way, if they don't find, and I'm just going to say, if they don't find Jesus, like we used to say in the military, you need Jesus, right? That would be
Yes.
right. If you don't find him, uh, it's a hard road, right? It's an
It
embrace
is.
the suck every day. And even with Jesus, it can be an embrace the suck every day. But I love that you've got healing in your story. I love that you and your wife are pulling together. I love that you have figured out how to kind of cope and manage and grow through your experiences and help other people grow through experiences. Marseliss, you and I could talk for hours on this subject, and I know it would probably bore the stink out of our audience, and so I'm not going to do that. But I want to give you the opportunity, if you want to, and I know you hate people. You just said you hate people, but if you do
Oh.
want to be in a relationship with other people, how do you recommend that people get in touch with you, follow you, or find you?
You can find me on Facebook, which my wife is a huge champion of me getting off of. But you can find me. You can find me on Facebook, Marselis, Marselis, Nelson on Facebook, or it's Marcellus.Nelson on Instagram. On Instagram, I post mostly fee stuff, and I don't post mostly a lot on Instagram. But if you want to find me on Facebook, that might be the best bet. And send me a private message, and I'm more than willing to sit down with people who want to meet one-on-one and talk about hot topics that maybe they don't feel comfortable in a group setting of talking about.
Yeah.
And so I'm fine with that. Or if you are a female and you need a woman's perspective, you're more than welcome to reach out to my wife, Miriam Nelson, and you'll find her on my Facebook as well. And my wife is great with multiple avenues because she's been the abused wife, she's been a neglected military spouse, she's been a single mom, she's been a divorcee, all those things, right? And then she had to be the one that was worried about her husband in Iraq, and then she had to be the one that had to deal with the guilt because her husband came back, but other people's husbands didn't. And then my wife has, ultimately always been, a woman of faith, and that has been the biggest part in our healing. Is for us, our common core is Christ.
Yeah.
Her relationship with Christ, my relationship with Christ, and that has been a common theme. And I tell people, there's more I do, to help me on my journey of healing. I read the Word, and I meditate in the Word, and I walk with Christ. But there's other things I like to do, other hobbies I like to do that keeps me going. But when you rely on just those other hobbies and not Christ, that's when you fall apart. Because I know people who are big in yoga, people who love guns, and people who smoke cigars, or people who do all these veterans events, and they go silky hikes and all this other stuff, but they have no faith, and they're without Christ, and they'll be on my phone crying because they're broken. And on Facebook, they look great. On Facebook, and their resumes and everything looks great, but behind closed doors, when I'm having conversations with them, their life is in shambles, and they own businesses, and they got all these things right, and they've had their identities in the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And so I tell them, you have to lay the foundation the right way. The foundation has to be your faith in Christ, and then you build from there.
I love
some people don't want to hear about Christ, and that's cool, but that's my shameless plug. Sorry, not sorry.
I love it. I love it. I think it's great. You know what? That's your story. I think for those who are interested in really diving deep in that, Marseliss, thank you for opening up yourself to people reaching out to you. I think that's amazing. There's a lot here. There's a lot for people to unpack. I encourage people to watch this a couple times because there's a lot in here. There's a lot about just healing, but there's a lot about how you really overcome struggle, how you work through difficult moments. And Marseliss, I just got to say thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your story, for being vulnerable to some degree. I know it's never easy to kind of throw it all out there, and you did, and I appreciate that. And I just got to say that people, if they want to learn more, they can always go to vision2020today.com. You can hear other great stories of people who are overcoming. If you want to get into a journey and just with other people that are working to help people progress, that's where you guys check out CAV, Competitive Advantages for Veterans on Facebook. It's a great group of just people leaning in and helping other people progress, whether it's financially or spiritually or emotionally or employment-wise, which is a big deal today, I think. So, Marseliss, I gotta say thank you, brother. Thank you for being so honest. Thanks for coming on the show. I love that you're smoking cigars. I see that people are like, hey, holy smokes moment. We could probably do that too, but
I'm down with that. We gotta get with Cade, but we'll make it happen.
Thank you for being on the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Mike. I really appreciate it. Buzz, thank you again for making it happen. Mark, thank you for being one of my mentors. It really helped me through some things. Chevy, Justin, my mother who's here. So thank you to my mom, Cynthia. Without my mother giving me the foundation to begin with in Christ, I would have never had a way to find my way back when I was in the dark.
Well, hopefully I met your mother's approval, because we talked about everything that my mom told me never to talk about. So
she'll let me know here in a bit, Mike. Don't worry. I'll let you know.
Very good. All right, everybody. Thank you for being on the show.